I don't think youngsters should be allowed to get access to the internet unattended, as the internet censorship and content restrictions are still causing headaches to many governments. Not everything found on the internet is trustable. On top of that, juveniles are just not mature enough to judge every situation, so they may be led astray by such unreliable information, and as a consequence, can easily become a victim of antisocial behaviors, fraudulent activities, and sexual abuse. For example, young children may emulate violent acts which they are constantly exposed to on the internet.
Okay, thank you. Now I'd like to talk more about the information. Apart from the internet, what are some other ways to look for information?
Well, of course, there's good old-fashioned books and libraries, which obviously seem to be going out of style because of the convenience of the internet. But I rather like books, and I think that for students especially, in many cases, it's better to go to the book, to the expert, rather than just to the website. Also, asking people if it's about study information, talking to professors is an excellent way to go. Or if it's about local knowledge, you're on the street, you want to find out a place to go, a place to eat, how to get somewhere. Why not just talk to people? Ask passers-by, people who might know, police, just people who know the area. So, reading other forms of published material and talking to people are good ways to find information.
What are the differences between the internet and books for searching information?
I mean, for one thing, as we said, the internet is full of fake news, and books obviously also are not necessarily all true, but there's a higher likelihood that a book might be more kind of trustworthy information than the internet. And the reason is because the author puts their name on that book, and that book has been reviewed by editors and publishers, and it will have a reputation from others who have read it. There'll be references in the book as to where that writer got their information from. So for many reasons, a book is a more reliable source of information than the internet. Also, it's easier to focus on the information in a book. If you imagine going to the library, you choose the book from the shelf, you sit down, then you have fewer distractions as you read the information compared to surfing the internet, where you just have to flick your thumb and you can be on a different site, or a game site perhaps, or a news site. It's so easy to be distracted. So those are some of the big differences between the internet and books.
Do you think there is too much information available these days?
There's no question about it. I mean, this is the information age, and so the name of the game is information. Even in business, data, information, metrics. Information is one of the key commodities in our era. But when you say too much information, one of the problems is that a lot of that information is not reliable. Again, I use the term fake news. Yes, there's a lot of information available on the internet, but how much of that is really useful? So while there is too much information available, perhaps there is not enough good information available these days.
What do you think of internet censorship?
Internet censorship, I think it's certainly on the rise, and to be honest, I don't really think it's a good thing. The idea of the internet, the World Wide Web, originally was to make all the information available to everyone, which is at least fair. Now, yes, of course, you don't want children looking at violent or sort of pornographic websites. You don't want that. I think there's such a thing as internet controls, but that's a different thing from internet censorship. What we're seeing now is companies like Facebook or Twitter or these platforms, which are supposed to be open information platforms for everybody equally, what we see now is that they're adopting political policies whereby they decide whether you're allowed to say something or not, or whether you're allowed to see something or not. And this was not the original idea of the internet. And personally, I don't like the idea of other people deciding what I should know and what I should not know. So really, I'm not very much in favor of it. On the other hand, you can see that, for the governments, from the government's perspective, if I were running a country, I would certainly not want to have hostile messages passed to the people through the internet. So I think that in some cases, it's a good idea for the government to cut out dangerous messages that could reduce the stability of the country.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now I'd like to talk more about internet. What do people do online in their free time?
Well, I mean, what it boils down to is what people do online in their free time is what they used to do, but in a different medium. I mean, for example, what would a young person do back in the day before the internet? They would look at magazines. Magazines was a huge industry. Girls would have fashion magazines and makeup magazines, music magazines, all of this kind of thing. The boys would have magazines about sports, magazines about engineering, about motorbikes and cars, this kind of thing. That's what people would look at in their free time. Or perhaps even actually playing games in their free time. Before the internet, you would go outside and, kick a football or even play paintball or laser tag or something like that. Now you're doing exactly that, but online. You don't have to move out of your bedroom. The whole thing happens inside the virtual world of your computer. So people are doing what they always did, just in a different medium.
Okay, thank you very much. And what effects does the internet have on schools?
Well, of course, it has, again, as I said a moment ago, when I had a problem with the formatting of my Word documents, what did I do? I just typed into the search panel what the problem was, and up popped the solution. So for students in education, this is a remarkably convenient and helpful device. Any question you have, the meaning of a word, some grammar, a piece of information for your research, just type in the words and in seconds you have that information. So yeah, it has a hugely beneficial effect.
Do you think many people waste their time online?
Well, yes and no. I mean, yeah, for sure. Let's be honest. Absolutely. Just the automatic, mindless surfing that we all do now. A lot of that is pointless. You find that the time flies by. What have you learned? Very little. But by the same token, the same activity could yield very valuable information if you just choose to go to a different site. So, you could go from a leisure site to a business site, do exactly the same activity, but one of them could enable you to make $1 million tomorrow, whereas the other one would have just passed, a few minutes of your time. So, yeah, people do waste their time, but also people use their time.
How do you think our use of the internet will change in the future?
Yeah, it's already started now, really. At the moment in the United States, which is where all these internet companies, started and have their headquarters, there's a big discussion going on about how much censorship and control a private internet company should have, like Google, for example, or Facebook, both of which are not allowed in China for good reasons. but how much control they should have about what people learn, about what people can see on the internet. And I think that this kind of thing it will become more problematic in the future. Also, we now have the Internet of Things. We have, devices that can switch on our heating system and our entertainment systems automatically. This kind of things. Our cars can talk to our kitchens, all of that kind of thing. We'll be using robots, and there are those like Stephen Hawking who think that the robots could become dangerous. So yes, we'll be using the internet very differently. The Internet of Things will be interacting in more dimensions. There'll be more 3D, internet-controlled things in the future, like cars, robots, and so forth.
Okay, thank you.
How can people find reliable friends on the internet? Reliable friends on the internet? Well, honestly, my answer is they can't. Because the internet world, the virtual reality, that's what we call it right now, this is so different from the real world that we live in. Because in the real world, if we want to make friends, we go to a bar or party, and then we meet various people. At least we can see them, right? We can see their faces, so we make a judgment, right? We think to ourselves, okay, this is the person that really attracts me. I want to be friends with this person. Maybe sometimes our decisions are not completely reliable. We can't just, really depend on some of the decisions we make in that moment. The thing is, on the internet is even much worse, because we never know who we are talking with. We never know who we are interacting with. We might be thinking that we're talking with a 20-year-old girl, but maybe the person on the other end is a 50-year-old guy who is a pervert. So yeah, we never know. We can never find reliable friends on the internet. Internet and books, which can provide helpful learning materials. Internet and books, well, as far as I'm concerned, they are both very valuable in helping people learn. A wide range of things, actually. And as for books, without a doubt, they are the most important source of information, right? Our human civilization has been handed down from generation to generation through books, through printed material, and that's for sure. But we shouldn't neglect the importance of the internet as well, because they do offer tons of valuable and precious learning materials. For example, the first thing that comes to mind right now is a website in China called Wang Yi Open Class or something like that. I'm sorry, the name is in Chinese. I just gave it a translation. So on this website, we have access to so many very good classes from prestigious universities, even well-known universities from the United States, the Great Britain, and Australia. So if people have a willing heart, they can definitely learn a wide range of things on this website. So yeah, what I think is that both internet and books are very good in helping people learn.
What are the different reasons why people use the internet? Well, actually, there are certainly some subtle reasons for this trend. First of all, those students that are getting ready for their final paper or the kinds of examinations or presentations are most likely to use the internet. They do this more often because it's more of an efficient way of acquiring knowledge that they are really into. Doing so might enable them to be elite in their own fields. Secondly, the internet will be like a big helper for those white collars. It's especially important to those who sit in the office and do the sedentary work every day. Above all, the internet also provides a wider range of chances to work out the challenges people may encounter. Plus, some disadvantages of the internet couldn't be ignored either. The children and the young teenagers are too young, so their general knowledge and social experience is still limited. They should be given some pieces of advice in advance. So I think that's my point. So that's it.
Which do you think is better, the internet or television? Apparently, the internet is way much better than the television. The TV is just a media stream. It just gives you a lot of content endlessly without considering your personal needs. There's always a mixture of nutrition as well as some garbage. by which I mean advertisements. However, when we use the internet, we always enjoy a lot of liberty. For example, recently I'm watching the American soap opera called The Goldbergs, and I love it so much. But if I watch it on TV, I'd have to wait for a whole week to watch another episode. But if I watch it on the internet, I can just binge watch the whole season. So I do believe that with time going by, more and more people will abandon TV shows and start enjoying shows on the internet.
Okay, about the advantages of using internet. I think internet can help us to find information much easier. Therefore, it can help us study. And internet is also a good way to find resources. It's much easier than just searching in books. But about the disadvantages of internet, it can cause anxiety and stress. The problem with anxiety and stress is that they can manifest itself differently for everyone. But common physical signs of anxiety or stress include a racing heartbeat, butterflies in the stomach, nausea, sweating, panic attacks, and insomnia. These problems are serious threats to our health. So that's the advantages and disadvantages of internet use. Well, in my opinion, I think it's because there are so many things that are found on the internet. And the internet always make our lives more convenient. For example, on the internet, people can sell and buy things, watch TVs, play games, listen to music, make friends. They can also read interesting news and many other things. Besides, I suppose the greatest thing about internet is that people can actually do all these things together at the same time. As time goes by, people find out they are dependent to the internet. The internet is an exit way from their reality, and that's why they're always online. Yes, I do think that the way people use the internet may change in the future, as it would allow us to be more aware of our world and our own behavior because of the use of artificial intelligence. Second, information sharing will be so enmeshed in our daily lives that we mostly won't even notice it. Thirdly, wearable devices will transform healthcare delivery. And finally, the bad guys will have new tools to make life more miserable for anybody else.
Okay, here's a part 3 video on the topic of the internet, and here is the first question. Should children be allowed to use the internet unsupervised? Let's have a listen.
I don't think youngsters should be allowed to get access to the internet unattended.
Notice how this guy says internet. It doesn't say internet. Internet. It's kind of like this T is not pronounced. That's how a lot of people pronounce the word internet. Okay, so in the beginning we have his answer. He doesn't think it's a good idea. He uses the word unattended. That's great. In the question, they said unsupervised. You don't need to use different words from the question. It's okay if you use words from the question. This is not like writing, but if you do use other words, like here, unattended, it shows you have a wider range of vocabulary.
Attended. As the internet censorship and content restrictions are still causing headaches
Not sure why it says the internet censorship. Is he talking about specific censorship? I think he should drop the. The way he pronounces headaches is a little strange. It is headaches.
To many governments, not everything found on the internet is justable.
This is what I hear. Just a ball. I don't know what he means by that. Maybe he's not saying just a ball, but that's what my ears tell me he's saying.
Internet is justable.
I'm not sure. So I kind of miss the first reason. Not everything found on the internet is something. Here comes the second reason. On top of that,
is justable. On top of that, juveniles are just not mature enough to judge every situation.
okay, so here we had youngsters. Now we have, let's see, juveniles. Again, good range of vocabulary.
Are just not mature enough to judge every situation, so they may be led astray.
And here we have a passive structure. They may be led astray. Led astray, it's a great phrase, and also here he's using it in the passive. Very good.
By such unreliable information.
So now here he uses the word such, and I guess the such refers back to this, but I don't know what that ball thing is. See, that's the danger of mispronouncing words. The examiner is not going to be able to quite follow everything you say after that, because maybe there's going to be this gap in their understanding of what you're saying.
And as a consequence, can easily become a victim of antisocial behaviors.
Okay, behaviors, let's drop the S. They can become a victim of antisocial behavior. Well, usually you become a victim of a crime. You don't often become a victim of behavior unless this behavior is directed towards you. Or maybe that is what he's trying to say. They can become a victim of antisocial behavior. Oh, maybe that is what they mean. So you will become... okay, so you are not the one doing the behavior, you are actually really the victim. Alright, I get it.
Easily become a victim of antisocial behaviors.
Behavior...
fraudulent activities and sexual abuse.
Okay.
For example, young children may emulate violent acts which they are constantly exposed to on the internet.
Ooh, internets. Why add the S there? Emulate is a great word to use. And here we have this relative clause, which they're constantly exposed to. Unfortunately, says internet. They are. Okay, so again, a passive structure. Are exposed to. So good grammar is a pity about some of the S's that he puts at the end of some words, and also where he used the word the. But overall, really good answer. Okay, let's look at the fluency and coherence. So here in the beginning, we see the answer, definitely no. And he gives us some support here with the conjunction as, used here to show the cause and effect. Then he moves on to the second reason. He says on top of that. And here I have juveniles and they, because the they refers to the juveniles, connecting these two ideas. Again here we have so, another conjunction. Here we have some referencing that's not accurate, because what does this such refer to? Such unreliable information. I mentioned this before. This doesn't refer to anything. And then moving on to the next part, we have and as a consequence. And to introduce the example, we have the simple phrase, for example. These are the things that tie your answers together. If we move on to lexes, here are some examples of less commonly used words. Unattended, that's one. Content restrictions. Those are some more words that I think are not as commonly used. And for idiomatic language, here we have causing headaches. because they're not really headaches, they're just problems. Of course, there are also some words that are used inappropriately, like this just a ball. I don't know what that is. I talked about judge before. You can't judge a situation. Evaluate, maybe that's the word he's looking for. You've got words like astray, unreliable. Unreliable, maybe not as much, but astray definitely is a less commonly used phrase. Then here we see two problems with plurals. Behavior should not have an S. Internet, there should be no S there. But some good vocabulary, we've got antisocial, fraudulent, going with activities, sexual, going with abuse. Here we have a great verb, emulate, and we have the adjective and noun, violent acts. We have an adverb and a verb, constantly exposed to. Good stuff. Too bad about the S's, but the good outweighs the bad. Moving on to the grammar, we have a modal that is part of a passive construction. Youngsters should be allowed to do whatever. That's great. Internet censorship, there should be no the, because we're not talking about any specific censorship. Here we have the present continuous tense are still causing, showing a change in tense. And this is almost the same as this, very similar. We have a modal and we have a passive structure, may be led. And then at the end, we don't really have much that stands out. What I would just, as always, recommend is use these relative clauses. These violent acts, which they're constantly exposed to. Easy way to make sure you get at least a decent score for grammar. Okay, let's move on to sample 2.
Okay, thank you. Now I'd like to talk more about the information. Apart from the internet, what are some other ways to look for information?
Okay, so the reason why she says apart from the internet is because in part 2 they talked about the internet as a source of information. So now she wants to hear about other things. The examiner doesn't want to hear what you said in part 2 again in part 3. They want to hear something new.
Information.
Well, of course, there's good old-fashioned books.
Look at this good in front of old-fashioned. Good old-fashioned books. That's great.
Libraries, which obviously seem to be going out of style.
Seem to be going out of style. Here, you can actually say seem to be or are apparently going out of style, unlike some other people we've listened to before who use apparently when they talk about themselves. Yeah, things can appear to happen to libraries. Things cannot appear to happen to yourself.
Style because of the convenience of the internet, but
going out of style, I don't know if I would say libraries are going out of style, but libraries are maybe being used less frequently.
Yes, of the internet, but I rather like books.
No, obviously he did not say liked here. He did say like. Let me fix that. I do like that he uses the word rather. I'm sure I've mentioned this before. Look at this rather before the verb. I rather like books. Those little words, they're just so useful.
I rather like books, and I think that for students especially, in many cases, it's better to go to the book, to the expert, rather than just to the website.
This you're going to have to explain, because a lot of websites are written by experts. So
also, asking people if it's about study information, talking to professors is an excellent way to go.
If you're a student, yes.
Or if it's about local knowledge, you're on the street, you want to find out a place to go, a place to eat, how to get somewhere. Why not just talk to people? Ask passers-by, people who might know, police, just...
See, the problem with this is a lot of what he's saying now is just lists. You're on the street, you want to find... Oh, also, I wouldn't say find out a place. This is find a place, not find out. Find out an answer. find a place. Place to eat, place to go, place to eat. See, there's no grammar, it's just a list. There are no verbs anywhere. And the same thing here. No. Oh, here, sorry. I should have started here. Study information. Oh no, it only happened once. Oh, my bad. It only happened once. Then it's not so bad. But if you look at this here, find out a place to go, a place to eat, how to get somewhere. Just be careful when you list things and you drop subjects and maybe you drop verbs. It means you're not using complete sentences, meaning it's difficult to get a good score for grammar if you do that a lot.
People who know the area. So, yeah, reading other forms of published material and talking to people are good ways to find information.
Okay, so here's a little summary at the end. Basically, reading other published material and talking to people. Nothing wrong with that. Let's move on. Okay, let's look at the fluency and coherence here. We have well, we have of course, we have you know. Now, you know is repeated twice here. I would just say try not to use these phrases too much. Maybe twice in one answer is sufficient. Now, there's some repetition here, like there's. It doesn't really get in the way of understanding what he's trying to say, but it is going to limit your score if you keep on repeating things. We have some other great phrases. Obviously seems to be, because of, we got the repetition here again, for, but this is good for students especially, using the adverb especially. We have in many cases, simple words such as also, simple words like or, it's about. But look at this now. Here he starts off by talking about local knowledge. He doesn't say, for example, he just straight goes into talking about the local knowledge. A place to go, place to eat, somewhere. And then when he talks about people, he doesn't say, for example, he just says passerby, police, people who know the area. And then this, I don't know why I underlined that. That should just be blue. So yeah, if the examiner hears you saying so yeah, they're gonna know that you are about to give a little summary at the end, which I don't really recommend, but hey, it's a clear signposting that that's coming. And then for the Lexes, maybe you don't think that good or old-fashioned are really less commonly used vocabulary, but when's the last time you heard somebody use the two words together? Good old-fashioned. That's great. Rather. I've talked about rather before. Using words like rather or quite or pretty are really going to make you sound more fluent. And here we have an idiomatic phrase, an excellent way to go. It's like an excellent choice. Instead of saying choice, use this phrase. Here we have local knowledge. That's pretty good. I talked about find out before. You can only find out information. You can't find out things or places or people. We have the modal might. And here we have an adjective plus material. Adjective is the past participle, published material. That's some good stuff. And if we move on to the grammar, here we have the present continuous seem to be going. Here he uses the article the correctly, even though it's repeated. The expert, because we're talking about a specific expert in a specific field. Here the street. And why did I... Oh, because here this is a noun. This is a noun, so this also has to be a noun phrase, how to get somewhere. And the same thing here, because reading and talking are examples of ways, and a way is a noun. So here you have to use nouns, reading and talking. Okay, let's move on.
What are the differences between the internet and books for searching information?
Okay, some problems with the question here. It's not for searching information, it's when searching for information. You can't search information, you search for things. And these people charge money for this.
I mean, for one thing, as we said, the internet is full of fake news.
We said, in your IELTS test, who's the we?
And books obviously also are not necessarily all true.
Nice adverb, not necessarily all true.
But there's a higher likelihood that a book might be...
Look at this now. A lot of people use the word likely. Not a lot of people use the word likelihood. Look at this structure here. There's a higher likelihood that a book might be
more kind of trustworthy information.
Ooh, but then it says the book might be more trustworthy information. See, here be is not the right verb, because books cannot be information. Books can contain information. So there's a higher likelihood that a book might contain more trustworthy information. Contain, not be.
The internet. And the reason is because the author puts their name on that book, and that book has been reviewed by editors and publishers.
There's some great vocabulary here specifically related to books, like editors, publishers.
And, it will have a reputation from others who have read it. There'll be
Okay, here we have the present perfect tense, have read it.
From others who have read it. There'll be references in the book as to where that writer got their information from.
True, but you can find that on websites too. A lot of websites have references as well.
So,
the reason why I'm saying this is because in part 3, the examiner is going to mention things like this. Maybe they will say, hey, but a lot of websites have references too. So doesn't that mean that it's kind of the same as a book? They really do say that.
Many reasons a book is a more reliable source of information than the internet. Also, it's easier to focus on the information in a book.
If I were him, I would have wrapped it up there. Now he's saying it's easier to focus on the information in a book. Well, actually, yeah, studies have shown that that's true.
If you imagine going to the library, you choose the book from the shelf, you sit down.
Okay, here comes that list of steps again. Okay, going to the library, choose the book, sit down. Be careful when listing too much.
You choose the book from the shelf, you sit down. Then you have fewer distractions as you read the information compared to...
Okay, so here, compared to, let's see how he handles this, because the preceding phrase is you have fewer distractions compared to. So if you compare two things, they need to be similar.
Surfing the internet, where you just have to flick your thumb and you can be on a different site.
Alright, I kind of missed what he said there. Let's go back to this. Let's see here. You have fewer distractions compared to surfing the internet. Okay, so yeah, noun, you have, and here the noun is surfing the internet. I thought he was going to say compared to when you, but it doesn't matter. As long as you use a noun, and here the noun is surfing, that's okay. Remember here, you, noun. So here, it's got to be a noun. It can't be surf.
Internet, where you just have to flick your thumb and you can be on a different site.
Now, wait a second. Who surfs the internet by flicking their thumbs? You click, you don't flick your thumb. So you can be on a different site, which is a click of a mouse.
Or a game site perhaps, or a news site. It's so easy to be distracted. So those are some of the big differences between the internet and books.
Okay. He always puts a summary at the end. Remember, you might not even, maybe you plan on giving a summary at the end. You might not even get to that because maybe the examiner will interrupt you. Maybe because they want to ask you a follow-up question, or maybe because they want to move on to the next question. You don't always have time for summaries.
Do you think there is too much information available these days?
There's no question about it. I mean, this is the
Okay. Very clear answer.
information age.
That's a great phrase, information age. Oh, and look at this next phrase.
So the name of the game is information.
The name of the game is something, something, something. So the name of the game, so that means that is the most important part. The name of the game is, and then whatever follows is the essence of what it is that you're talking about.
You know, even in business, data, information, metrics. Information is one of the key commodities.
There's so much good vocabulary here. Data, information, metrics, and here key commodity, because in the online world there definitely are commodities as well, and your personal information is one of them.
Commodities in our era. But when you say too much information, one of the problems is that a lot of that information is not reliable.
When you say too much information, one of the problems is a lot of information is not reliable. Okay.
Again, I use the term fake news.
But although, just remember, information and news are not the same thing, but okay.
Yes, there's a lot of information available on the internet, but how much of that is really useful?
Okay, asking rhetorical questions in your response. I don't think that's a bad idea. As long as you don't say right, because if you say right, it means like you are asking the examiner. But asking rhetorical questions, there's nothing wrong with that.
So, while there is too much information available, perhaps there is not enough good information available these days.
Good point. Making a little concession at the end. While it's true, there's too much information, not enough is reliable. Concessions are also a good strategy to use. Alright, let's look at the fluency and coherence. Here we have 3 phrases all put together. I mean, for one thing, as we said, take it easy with the discourse markers. These are good, but I wouldn't suggest that you try to put so many together. You might make a mistake. Here we have an adverb, obviously. We have the phrase, the reason is because. And here, so for many reasons. We have some simple words like also. We have this if you imagine. We have then. We have as compared to, actually. As compared to, making this comparison. The repetition, he often says but if you start to say if you have many us in one place, it's more difficult to follow what you're saying. And then the simple so. Okay, moving on to the lexes. Full of, well, that is idiomatic because it's not literally full of, right? We have adverbs like necessarily and I thought there was another one. I guess not. We have this adjective and noun going together, higher likelihood. Instead of just saying more likely, we have the noun form here. As I said before, books cannot be information, so that's not a great verb to use. It should be contain. Trustworthy is good. Editors, publishers, reputation, references. These words are all related to books. Well, reputation, not only books. Not only related to books, but yeah, good lexes when talking about published material. We have the word distractions. Here I think he confused reading a book with navigating online, because you don't flick your thumb to go to a different site. You flick your thumb maybe to turn the page. And here we have the participle form of the noun, so using a different form of a word he used before. If we move on to the grammar, I always like modals, might be. Here we have the present perfect tense. The book has been reviewed by editors, also in the passive form. We have a relative clause, others who have read it. Also the present perfect here. And this phrase here, there will be references in the book as to where the writer got their information from. As to, and then this noun phrase. We have the comparative structure here, a more reliable source than the internet, more reliable, getting the adjective right. And here we have another comparison, and he's comparing to nouns. Going to the library compared to surfing the internet. I guess I should make this blue as well. Well, there we go. Okay. So remember, when you compare two things, after this, you can't say surf the internet. After compare to, you can't use a verb because you started off by talking about a noun. So after you say compare to, it's got to be a noun as well, and he gets that right.
What do you think of internet censorship?
I can't believe these people didn't even bother to edit this. Why not just go back and re-record this? All right.
Internet censorship. I think it's it's certainly on the rise.
On the rise, yeah.
And
I think this guy is struggling with the response because he's living in China and they are being censored. Maybe he's not sure what to say.
To be honest, I don't really think it's a good thing. The idea of the internet, the World Wide Web.
Well, to be fair, the internet and the World Wide Web are not exactly the same. And also, do you really need to repeat this? Although technically there is a difference. But okay.
Originally was to make all the information available to everyone.
Okay, look at the adverb here. Originally, the idea of the internet originally was to make all the information. I don't know why the information. Is he talking about specific information? Originally, very good, but drop the.
Originally was to make all the information available to everyone. Which is at least fair.
Okay, which, always a good idea to use which.
Now, yes, of course.
Okay, concession. So he's arguing one side, then he's going to go to the other side.
Want children looking at violent or sort of pornographic websites. You don't.
Okay, so he concedes this point.
That I think there's such a thing as internet controls, but that's a different thing from internet censorship.
So now he's arguing the other side. So internet controls are okay. Internet censorship is not.
Seeing now is companies like Facebook or Twitter or these platforms.
Yeah, this was in the news like maybe last year or so. Platforms is a great word to use when you talk about Facebook or Twitter. Because yeah, there are platforms. Last year there was a big issue about whether these companies are platforms or whether they are publishers. You can definitely call Facebook and Twitter a platform. It's a place where people can go to, well, express themselves, publish their opinions, publish their thoughts. And it's people publishing their thoughts, not the companies. That's why they argued that they were not publishers.
Which is supposed to be open information platforms for everybody equally. What we see now is that they're adopting political policies whereby they decide whether you're allowed to say something or not.
Okay, I do like the whereby. Let's see here. Okay, so whereby they decide, and here whether you're allowed to
see something or not. And this was not the original idea of the internet. And
interesting that he doesn't talk about government censorship.
Personally, I don't like the idea of other people deciding what I should know and what I should not know.
Okay, here he uses the word personally correctly because he's talking for himself. He's not talking for other people, just his opinion.
I'm not very much in favor of it. On the other hand, you can see that,
of course, he's in favor of government censorship.
The government's, from the government's perspective, If I were running a country, I would certainly not want to have.
Okay, here the modal and past tense. If I were running a country, I would. If, past tense be verb, would, because he's not really running a country.
Hostile messages passed to the people through the internet.
Oh, that's a nice phrase. Hostile messages. Hostile is a great adjective. Unfriendly to you, the government.
So I think that in some cases, it's a good idea for the government to cut out dangerous messages.
I don't know what cut out means. Does that mean censor? I mean, the verb is censor. The government to cut out dangerous messages. Censor, maybe.
Could reduce the stability of the country.
Okay, fluency and coherence. Here in the beginning, we see him repeating the core concept of the question. Sometimes it's a natural response to repeat the question or to repeat part of the question. If that's your natural response, do it. Or if you want to buy some time by repeating the question or repeating part of the question, do that, but just don't do it too much. Often when I hear weaker candidates repeating the question, I kind of think, oh, maybe they don't quite understand the question. So if you repeat the questions too often, it might be a sign to the examiner that you're not really understanding the questions. Moving on, we've got words like certainly, to be honest. Those are good. Here we have and I didn't highlight the and the here because these two are separated, but here they're right together. Be careful with umming and uhing too much now. Here we have the word originally, because here he's talking about the state of the internet back in the day, and here he's talking about the situation now and the situation now. So these words help us to follow the progression of his argument. Here we have now. This now is not talking about time. This now is used to introduce the other side of the argument. Here we have some referencing. The that, referring to the kids looking at pornographic websites. Let's see. Here we have whereby. Here we have this, referring back to what he said before. We have this and I personally, so really. We have on the other hand, used to introduce the other side of the argument. Here we have from the government's perspective, introducing another perspective. Unfortunately, just before this, he says for the government. So he kind of stumbles into this phrase about the perspective, which makes it much less fluent than it would have been. And then he follows this up by repeating if I were. So there's some good, but it's sandwiched in between some phrases that are making him sound less fluent. Here we have certainly, and down here we have so. Okay, let's look at Lexis. We've got on the rise. That's a good phrase. We've got thing, which is a terrible phrase. What is he talking about here? Don't use the word thing. Thing is too vague. So if something is on the rise, it's a trend. So why not say, I don't think it's a good trend. Don't use the word thing. It's too vague. We have violent and pornographic. Especially with pornographic, you don't see this adjective a whole lot. We've got platforms that I mentioned before, talking about Facebook and Twitter. Great word to describe these two. Equally, maybe you think equally is not a less commonly used word. I see the word equal a lot. I don't see the word equally a lot. And here we have adopting political policies. Maybe you see these words used separately, but here they go together so well. Adopting political policies. Great. Here we have very much in favor of. Simple words, but not used together like this very often. Here we have hostile and stability. These are good. The cut out. I don't know what that means, really. Does that mean intercept? Does that mean censor? This is not the right phrase to use when talking about messages. Okay, here he's talking about the idea of the internet, and he uses the phrase was to make. Here he is using this noun phrase to start the sentence, what we're seeing now. Here it's repeated, what we see now. The only difference is the tense, but the meaning is pretty much the same. Here we have the relative clause, which are supposed to be blah 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 blah. Here we have whereby they decide, and here we have whether or not. And moving on to the last part, here he's talking about the idea. Ideas are nouns, and here is the noun, other people deciding with the ing, what I should know. Here we have an if clause used with the past tense auxiliary verb and the modal would to show it's now real. And here at the bottom we have the modal could. Alright, let's move on to sample 3.
Okay, thank you. Now I'd like to talk more about internet. What do people do online in their free time?
Again, these people didn't even bother to edit this, went out with the mistakes, and yes, they charge money for this.
Well, I mean, what it boils down to is what people do online in their free time is what they used to do, but in a different medium.
Ah, there's such good language here. Look at this here. What it boils down to. Nice idiomatic phrase. So essentially what people do in their free time, but instead of using the word essentially, he uses the phrase boils down to. Great idiomatic phrase, because nothing is really being boiled. Let's continue with this.
But in a different medium.
Just when you're talking about doing things online, why not use the preposition on? Because you don't do things in the internet, you do them on the internet. So on a different medium.
I mean, for example, what would a young person do back in the day before the internet? They would look at magazines.
If you are younger, maybe you have difficulty identifying with what this guy is saying.
Magazines was a huge industry.
Magazines were a huge industry.
Girls would have fashion magazines and...
Listen to the intonation here. Girls would have fashion magazines, rising intonation, and makeup magazines. I'm assuming, again, rising intonation.
Makeup magazines, music magazines, all of this kind of thing. The boys would have magazines about sports, magazines about engineering.
Just be careful when you stereotype people into liking this kind of magazine or that kind of magazine. Language-wise, there's nothing wrong about that. But maybe the examiner will ask you, hey, do girls only like music and fashion and stuff like that?
About motorbikes and cars, this kind of thing. That's what people would look at in their free time. Or perhaps even actually playing games.
I can see where he's going with this answer, but he needs to get to the point faster. Okay, so people used to read magazines, actual real printed magazines, and now they can read those magazines online. Some people used to play games, and now you can play those games online. That's essentially what he's trying to say, but he's taking too long.
In their free time. Before the internet, you would go outside and, kick a football.
I mean, you have to ask yourself, if you say things like kick a football, or what comes next, play paintball, is that great vocabulary? Is that going to help your score? Or are you just dragging out the answer?
Or laser tag, or something like that. Now, you're doing exactly that, but online. You don't have to move out of your bedroom. The whole thing happens inside the virtual world of your computer.
Okay, so here's a good phrase. Everything happens inside the virtual world of your computer. Okay, I mean, even if you don't really have VR, you can still maybe use virtual world, not virtual reality, but virtual world.
The world of your computer. So people are doing what they always did, just in a different medium.
Maybe here, let's change this. People are doing what they've always done. Because
It didn't stop. It's not finished. So why use the past tense? People are doing what they've always done, not what they did. Okay, he starts off with 3 phrases, not 1, not 2, but 3. Well, I mean, what it boils down to. It's really too much. But this is blue because this phrase, what it boils down to, is just so good. But don't overuse the discourse markers. Like here, I mean, you know, for example, it's just too much here. And there's nothing outstanding in any of these samples. Now here's some good referencing. He talks about a young person. And then here he uses the pronoun they. Maybe you're wondering why it's not he or she. The reason is because he doesn't say the gender of the person. So they can mean men or women. Good referencing there. Moving on, that, referring to what he talked about before. Here we have perhaps, even, actually. Here we have before, just helping us with the sequencing of events. Here we have the phrase exactly that. We have so and just. The so, just, these go together. The just qualifies what comes after the so. For the lexes, I'm including what it boils down to here because this is idiomatic. Like I said before, nothing is really boiled. Medium is a pretty good word. Back in the day, when you want to talk about the past, this is a good phrase to use. Industry is pretty good. Thing is a terrible word. Don't say thing. Say this kind of printed matter or this kind of material. You're talking about magazines. Don't use the word thing. Say what you're talking about. Here we have laser tag. That's the only one of these activities that really stand out. We've got football, paintball. Those are not important. Virtual world rather is pretty good. And here we have medium again. For the grammar, these noun phrases, what it boils down to, what people do online, what they used to do, that's pretty good. And here, when talking about past habits, he says they would look, past habit, would have. Not too much here that's really outstanding. It's error-free, but not that varied in range. Because here, would look, would go. That's what I mean. Not really very varied, but pretty accurate.
Okay, thank you very much. And
Interesting that she says thank you very much when the test is not finished.
what effects does the internet have on schools?
Well, of course, it has, again, as I said a moment ago, when I had a problem with the formatting of my Word documents.
Okay, so here he's referring back to what he said in part 2. I don't know where he's going with this. Because, okay, let's listen.
What did I do? I just typed into the search panel what the problem was, and up popped the solution.
Okay, so everything up to here is just a repetition of what he said before in part 2. So why even bother mentioning that? It doesn't help your score if you say the same thing that you said in part 2, but now you're saying it in part 3. Don't repeat yourself.
So for students in education, this is a remarkably convenient and helpful device.
Now let's go back to the question. What effect does the internet have on schools? So what device is he talking about? The internet is not a device. A device is a machine. So I don't know what he's talking about. Is he talking about computers, or is he actually talking about the internet? But what did I want to... Oh, here, remarkably. Look at this adverb. Remarkably convenient. Using adverbs with adjectives is such a great idea. This is going to help your score for Lexis so much.
And helpful device. You know, any question you have, the meaning of a word, some grammar, a piece of information for your research, just type in the words and in seconds you have that information.
Okay, it just seems to me like he's missing a big aspect that is contained within the vocabulary of the question. The question said schools. So far, I've just heard him talk about students, but what about the teachers? I mean, school consists not only of students, there must be teachers also. So how can teachers use the internet? I think that's actually what the question is about. How can schools use the internet to teach? Now, it's fine, students can use the internet to find information, but how can teachers use this to teach? Okay, we've got the phrases, well, and of course. And here he says, as I said a moment ago, if you mention something and you want to refer back to that, say that you mentioned it, refer back to that, get it out there, say this, it's useful. And here we have pretty simple words. We've got so, we got this referring to the internet, we got and here towards the end where there's a little bit of a summary, he starts the summary with so yeah, it, again, it referring to the internet. Let's see, lexes. We've got formatting, that's a word you don't see very often. We got panel, and then we have up, popped. Now, if the verb comes after the noun, then the order will be reversed. So we could say, and the solution popped up. But if you put the verb before the noun, then the preposition comes first. So up popped the solution, or the solution popped up. Let's see, we've got the adverb here, remarkably, going with the adjective convenient. Here he calls the internet a device, which it's not. That's not the right word. Information, he uses the measure word piece of. And here we have the adverb hugely with the adjective beneficial. For the grammar, I don't think there's much to say here. I don't know why he says it has here. Here we have a noun phrase. Typed, you can only type nouns. So here the noun phrase is what the problem was. And right at the end, there's nothing that I can see that's really worth mentioning.
So yeah, it has a hugely beneficial effect.
I feel like he kind of missed the opportunity to talk about the educational advantages that come with having the internet. But okay.
Do you think many people waste their time online?
Well, yes and no. I mean, yeah, for sure.
Now this is confusing. Yes and no, for sure. Okay. So which one is it?
Let's be honest. Absolutely.
Okay, so now he said yes twice. So I'm guessing now the answer is yes. I mean, it's okay to change your mind. If you want to go from yes and no to just yes, it's okay. But then maybe let's do what he does. Say it twice. Absolutely. So the examiner knows, okay, hey, I've changed my mind. It's fine to change your mind. I mean, these questions are being asked in real time. You have to respond in real time. Sometimes maybe the first thing you say is not really what you mean.
Absolutely. Just the automatic, mindless surfing that we all do now.
Okay, I never really thought about automatic, mindless surfing, but yeah, people can stay online for a long time, and they do get addicted to that. This is kind of interesting language. Automatic, mindless surfing. Pretty good.
All do now. You know, a lot of that is pointless. You find that the time flies by. What have you learned? Very little.
Okay, again, what am I saying? Again, we have this question here, a rhetorical question. Although maybe here it's not rhetorical because he gives the answer. So you've learned very little. I like these questions the guy asks.
But by the same token, the same activity could yield very valuable information if you just choose to go to a different site.
Oh boy, I hope he's going to give an example here because I don't know what he's talking about. I do like the verb yield that goes with valuable information. Your activity can yield valuable information. All right, here we have the present tense. If, choose, because this is always true.
So, you know, you could go from a leisure site to a business site, do exactly the same activity.
Don't understand. What activity? From a leisure site. But people use leisure sites and business sites for different purposes. So what is the activity that he's talking about that you can do on both sites? Example, please.
But one of them could enable you to make $1 million tomorrow, whereas the other one would have just passed, a few minutes of your time.
Sites cannot pass your time. Only you can pass your time. Whereas on the other, you would have wasted, or you would have passed a few minutes. You would have passed, not the website. The website cannot pass your time. Only you can do that. Minor point.
Of your time. So yeah, people do.
I don't understand this example. You go on a business website and you make $1 million. What is he talking about?
Your time. So yeah, people do waste their time, but also people use their time.
People do waste their time, but also people use their time. Okay, this answer, I'm sorry, it's not clear. I don't understand. Because in the beginning, he went from yes, no to absolutely. And then at the end, people waste their time, people use their time. So which is it, waste or use? I'm confused by the ending, as well as the example in the middle. Okay, so he waffled the introduction a little bit, going between yes and no, and then for sure. But hey, he did make it clear here. He used some phrases like, let's be honest, absolutely, trying to make it clear. Here we have first time he uses it in this answer. This phrase is overused, but I highlighted it in blue here the first time he used it. Here, maybe he's very used to saying on the other hand, but that's not actually what he wanted to say, so he corrected into by the same token. This is a great phrase. Too bad he started off using the wrong phrase. Now, too many you-knows. You know. Take it easy with overusing discourse markers. Simpler words like but and whereas. Here we have so yeah, as I mentioned before. So yeah can be used to introduce your conclusion if you choose to have one in part 3. This last phrase does not make any sense, so that's why that's in red. I don't understand what he's trying to say. Moving on to the Lexis. These are some great adjectives to go with surfing. Automatic, mindless. We have an idiom, time flies by. If you want to use idiomatic language, this phrase is not too hard to use. Yield is a great verb. Maybe actually I should have highlighted blue also, because blue, valuable. Because valuable is a great adjective to go with information. Not much here, just enable. Moving on to the grammar. We've got the modal going with yield, and we have an if clause going with a present tense verb. Another modal. Now the reason I highlighted go and do is because if you use a base verb here, then here you also need to use a base verb. Could go, could do. Even though here the could is omitted, it still has to be a base verb. Same thing here, could going with a base verb, enable. And here's another modal, would. Modals might not look like they are very important, but it is something that the examiners listen out for.
Use their time.
How do you think our use of the internet will change in the future?
Yeah, it's already started now, really, at the moment in the United States, which is where all these internet companies, started and have their headquarters.
Okay, nice relative clause here in the middle, which is where all these internet companies started and have their headquarters. Yeah, that's good language.
Big discussion going on about how much censorship and control a private internet company should have.
How do you think our use of the internet will change in the future? Okay, let's see where he's going with this. Right now, I don't see this answer as addressing the question.
Like Google, for example, or Facebook, both of which are not allowed in China for good reason.
Okay, alright. Never mind what he just said.
But how much control they should have about what people learn, about what people can...
See, now, at this point, it's where the examiner is going to cut you off, and they're going to repeat the question, because what are you talking about?
Can see on the internet. And I think that this kind of thing will become more problematic in the future.
This kind of thing? What kind of thing? How much control they have what people learn? This kind of thing will become more problematic in the future. This is not answering the question.
We have, devices that can switch on.
Okay, here we finally get to something. Sorry, I went over the beginning. Okay, here, this sentence. Also, he should have started his answer here. The Internet of Things.
Also, we now have the Internet of Things. We have, devices.
This answers the question.
That can switch on our heating system and our entertainment systems automatically. This kind of things. Our cars can talk to our kitchens. All of that kind of thing. We'll be using robots, and there are those like Stephen Hawking who think that the robots could become dangerous.
I'm not sure what the robots have to do with the internet. I don't think he was talking about robots. I think he was talking about artificial intelligence, how we should fear the eventual evolution of AI, not robots, really. I mean, talking about AI is maybe tangentially related to the internet, but it's not really what the question is asking. But the Internet of Things, definitely, that is spot on.
So yes, we'll be using the internet very differently.
Mm-hmm.
The internet.
We'll be using the internet very differently. Look at the adverb here, differently.
The Internet of Things will be interacting in more dimensions. There'll be more.
Will be. Did he say will be or where be?
Things will be interacting in more dimensions.
I said will be, right? Alright, change that.
Differently. The Internet of Things will be interacting in more dimensions.
We'll be interacting in more dimensions. How many dimensions are there?
More 3D, internet-controlled things in the future, like.
Okay, now this doesn't make any sense. What is he talking about now? We'll be interacting in 3D. Well, we can do that now. Internet-controlled things in the future, like cars, robots. Let's put a comma there. I have to say, this is a very difficult question to answer, because who knows what's going to happen in the future. So the idea of connecting devices to, for example, your mobile phone and controlling those devices through your mobile phone using the internet, that's something you can maybe use in your answer, like he said, the Internet of Things. Cars, maybe cars. He didn't really say anything about cars, but maybe cars. When we have self-driving cars, the cars can get traffic reports and other information, weather information through the internet. That'll make driving so much safer, so much more convenient, and these cars will be connected to the internet. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure how, rather. Maybe there will be satellites that are specifically purposed for the purpose of providing internet to these self-driving cars. Who knows how that's going to work? They will be on their own network, maybe. That's stuff that you can talk about. Okay, and here the test comes to an end.
Okay, thank you.
Alright, thank you indeed. Alright. Okay, for Fluency and Coherence, we have at the moment giving us a time reference. We have used here for the first time. Now, here he went from saying for like to for example. Don't use for and like together. You probably know that. You can just say like, but not for like. Both of which, that's a good phrase. This is an attempted usage of a good phrase, but it should have been for good reason. That's why the reasons is an S. Are not allowed in China for good reason, not reasons. Now, again,
too many instances of him using you know. Some repetition here, can. If the examiner cannot hear what you're saying, then you cannot be that coherent. Here we have also, here we have you know again. Now, I underlined Internet of Things because he goes on to talk about the Internet of Things here, but in between he's talking about the robots. So he discussed this topic, moved on to a different topic, and then went back to the Internet of Things. And this change from one topic to another topic and then back to the original topic is not very clearly signposted. Here we have you know again. I mean, it's pretty good. You know again. And right at the end we have and so forth. Headquarters, as far as Lexis goes, is a pretty good word to use. We have big discussion. That might sound very simple, but using big with discussion, these two words really do go well together. We got problematic. I don't see people using the adjective of problem a whole lot. Great word to use. The Internet of Things, that's a real thing. It's great that he knows this. Entertainment systems, good phrase. Automatically is a good adverb. I talked about this before. You'll notice here he said things, here he says thing. It should be thing anyway, but don't say this kind of thing. If it's an entertainment system or if it's a heating system, then say this kind of system. Our cars can talk to our kitchens, all of that kind of thing. Say these kinds of devices, all of these kinds of devices. Try to avoid using the word thing, even more so in your writing. Let's see, here we have interacting, that's good. I was kind of torn between making dimensions either red or blue, because I don't think dimensions is really the right word here, because I don't think there are going to be more dimensions in the future. But just using the word dimensions by itself is pretty good. Okay, and here we have a past participle acting as an adjective, internet controlled. That is good. Grammar. Here we have a relative clause, which is where these companies have their headquarters. Great phrase. We have the modal. Here we have a passive structure, are not allowed in China. Here we have some noun phrases, how much control, what people learn, what people can see. The noun phrases are good. We also have the modal should there. And here, talking about the future, we have will be using, will be interacting, it'll be more. So using modals to talk about the future, as you should. Okay, let's move on to sample 4.
How can people find reliable friends on the internet? Reliable friends on the internet? Well, honestly, my answer is they can't.
They can't. Listen to the way he talks. He feels very adamant about this.
My answer is they can't.
I love that.
Because the world, the internet world, the virtual reality, that's what we call it right now.
Nope, we don't. The internet and virtual reality are not the same thing. We don't call the internet virtual reality.
So different from the real world that we live in. Because in the real world, if we want to make friends, we go to a bar or party, and then we meet various people. At least
you can do that online too.
We can see them, right?
You can see people online too.
See their faces, so we make a judgment, right? We
do all those things online as well.
We think to ourselves, okay, this is the person that really attracts me. I want to be friends with this person.
Do you want to be friends with the people you find attractive? I don't know. Maybe he does.
Maybe sometimes our decisions are not completely reliable.
Unreliable decisions. Unreliable is not really a word that we use to describe decisions. You can use unreliable to describe people.
decisions are poor. So maybe our decisions are not always completely thought out. Thought out, not reliable.
We can't just, really depend on some of the decisions we make.
We can't depend on our decisions. We can't depend on our judgment. I think that's what he's trying to say. Judgment. You can't depend on decisions. Decisions cannot be reliable. He's making the same mistake twice. Judgment. We can't really depend on our judgment.
In that moment. The thing is, on the internet is even much worse.
He said it's, right?
On the internet is even much worse.
I'm assuming he says it's. I hear is, but it can't be is. It's got to be it's. Alright, on the internet it's much worse. Okay, tell us why.
Even much worse, because we never know who we are talking with. We never
Is he talking about dating websites? I'm assuming so.
know who we are interacting with. We might be thinking that we're talking with a 20...
Something that I like here is the use of the continuous. Interacting, thinking, talking. Because everything that he's talking about here is a thing that happens very temporarily. It's not something that continues all the time. So we have the present continuous, and I do like the modal here also. We might be thinking, not we might think.
Year-old girl, but maybe the person on the other end is a 50-year-old guy who is a pervert. So
Maybe he's talking about dating websites.
yeah, we never know. We can never find reliable friends on the internet.
Oh my goodness, please be careful when using the word never. Because there are people who have found marriage partners on the internet, so how can you say people can't even find friends? Okay, we have well, honestly, my answer is. Now this might look like 3 phrases, but I think that my answer is not quite the same as the discourse markers, well and honestly. This is just like to introduce the answer. We have because, we have I mean. You see, pretty dense with the markers here in the beginning. This is not true. We don't call the internet virtual reality. That's why that's what we call it right now, is in red. We have this referring to the internet world. We have because. We have at least. Again, don't ask the examiner, right? Some simple words. So, this, talking about the people that you can see. We have the modal maybe, but here the modal is used to show your opinion. If you know, depends on, the thing is. That's a great phrase. The thing is. If you want to make a point, like in fact. Because we have the modal might. Same comments go as for the comments for maybe. Here's maybe again. And at the end we see again when he wants to make a little summary, he says so yeah at the end. For the Lexis, virtual reality, even though I don't think that is what we call the internet, it's still a good phrase to use, though he doesn't really use it correctly here. We have the word various. Make a judgment. People do make judgments. Now here, unfortunately, he uses the wrong verb. I talked about that before. Decisions cannot be reliable. And here, people cannot depend on their decisions. So here, unfortunately, there's some trouble with the language. In that moment, that is a great phrase. And it can also help us to understand the time reference better, so it can also count towards coherence. Interacting with, this verb going with this preposition. Pervert, that's definitely a word I don't hear a whole lot. Definitely less commonly used. Moving on to the grammar, we have this noun phrase, what we call it. Here we have a relative clause that we live in. We have this if structure, if with the present tense want. Here we have the noun phrase. Well, actually, no, this is not a noun phrase. It's a relative clause. That really attracts me. The person that really attracts me. Here's the noun phrase. We never know who we are talking with. We never know who we are interacting with. Some noun phrases. A modal. And here he's using the present continuous because this action is temporary. It doesn't continue forever. And here is a relative clause. Who is a pervert? Alright, sample 5.
Internet and books, which can provide helpful learning materials.
This is a very odd way of phrasing the question. Internet and books, which can... What? I would have said, can the internet or books provide useful or helpful learning materials?
Internet and books? Well, as far as I'm concerned, they are both very valuable in helping people learn.
Good grammar here. Valuable in helping, noun phrase. People learn. Valuable in helping.
Valuable in helping people learn. A wide range of things, actually. And as for books, without a doubt, they are the most...
let me just throw that in there. Without a doubt, as for books, the most important source of information, even today.
Or books, without a doubt, they are the most important source of information, right?
Even today? That's my question.
Our human civilization has been handed down from generation to generation.
I'm not sure you can say civilization has been handed down from generation to generation. Because things that are passed down would be like language and culture. Civilization. I don't think so. Our civilization has been handed down. Culture has been handed down through books, maybe. Not civilization. It's not an important matter. It's really not a big deal. I'm just thinking logically. Culture would be a better word here than civilization. You could say civilization, our current civilization is based on the culture that's been passed down from generation to generation through books.
Through books, through printed material, and that's for sure. But we shouldn't neglect the importance of the internet as well.
Oh, how often do you see the use of the word neglect? That's great. We shouldn't neglect the importance of the internet. I don't think anybody is, though, but great language.
As they do offer...
Who's the they? They? Is that the internet? Why is the internet they? Because it offers. Who's they here?
As well, because they do offer tons of valuable and precious learning materials. For example, the first thing that comes to mind right now is a website in China called Wang Yi Open Class or something like that. I'm sorry, the name is in Chinese.
I hate it when this guy does this. You don't need to... Okay, if a name is a name, it's a name. If it's Wang Yi, then it's Wang Yi. Just say that. You don't need to apologize. Don't need to say the name is in Chinese. Just say the name. A name is a name.
Gave it a translation. So on this website, we have access to so many very good classes from prestigious universities.
Yeah, I think many countries have this. Great language here. Look at this here. Prestigious universities. Those two words go together so well.
Even well-known universities.
What? I was just saying how good the language is. Is there a university that is prestigious that is not well-known? I mean, why do you need to say both? Even well-known. Prestigious, even well-known. This even well-known makes no sense. Oh, I love this guy speaking, but what is he doing here?
Well-known universities from the United States, the Great Britain.
The Great Britain. Well, I make a ton of mistakes too. There's no comma there. Oh no, Great Britain. There's no the. The UK. Yes, the UK, but not the Great Britain.
And Australia. So, if people have a willing heart, they...
He makes up for the mistakes by using this phrase. Look at this here. If people have a willing heart. So if you are willing to do something, if you have a willing heart, yeah?
Definitely learn a wide range of things on this website. So yeah, I mean, what I think is that both internet and books are very good in helping people learn.
Okay, I do like the answer. A couple of mistakes, more mistakes than usual, but still terrific vocabulary used there, especially the part about universities. Okay, the fluency and coherence. Here we have well, and we have as far as I'm concerned. The it doesn't really matter. Actually, that's a great phrase. Moving on to a different topic, we have this phrase and as for. Then moving on to books, we have the phrase without a doubt, showing your opinion on this. Right, avoid that. Don't ask the examiner this question. I can't really respond to you. This and here, I don't think it's wrong to say and, that's for sure, but it would be better if he just said that's for sure, dropping the and. You've got but, we have because. The they is inaccurate referencing because the internet is singular, so it should be it. We have, for example, the first thing that comes to mind, so, even, so. The they referring to people, that's right, definitely, again, showing how you feel about it. And here at the end, the phrase so yeah, when it comes to his little summary here. And here he gives us his summary by saying, actually, maybe I should make this red. Choose one. Don't say I mean what I think is. Just choose one. Don't put them all together. I mean, look at this. It's a lot now. So yeah, I mean what I think is. Consider dropping some of them. You don't need three together. Lexus, we got valuable. I highlighted source of because he's using the right preposition of. Human civilization, that's pretty good. Handed down, idiomatic language, very good. Here, the participle printed, using as an adjective with material, printed material. Neglect is good. Tons, an idiomatic word. I underlined valuable because he already used valuable there. You don't give something a translation, you just translate it. Let's see, the verb have, going with access. Prestigious is a great adjective. Willing heart, that's idiomatic language. A wide range, maybe I should also make the of blue. A wide range of things. Moving on to the grammar, we've got in helping people. We have the present perfect has been. The prepositions from, to. We have the modal shouldn't. And we have this if structure, if present tense verb have. And here we have in and ing. Very good, in helping people learn. The first phrase, prestigious, prestigious. All right, sample 6.
What are the different reasons why people use the internet?
Okay, we saw this before.
Well, actually, there are certainly some sort of reasons for this trend.
This guy always starts his answers in exactly the same way. There are certain sorts of reasons for this trend. Okay, I don't know what the trend is. Is the trend using the internet? I suppose so.
Certainly some sort of reasons for this trend. First of all, the students that are getting ready for their final paper.
The students
That are getting ready for their final paper or
final
kinds of examinations or presentations are most likely to use the internet.
Most likely. Okay, the language is fine, but logically I don't understand why they are most likely to use the internet. I mean, I'm using the internet. I'm not a student.
They do this more often.
His answer is always they do this more often, yeah.
because it's more of an efficient way of acquiring knowledge.
Okay, acquire does go with knowledge. That's good. Yeah.
That they are really into.
What? That they got real into.
Efficient way of acquiring knowledge that they are really into.
I can't hear what he's saying here.
Doing so might enable them to be elite in their own fields.
Again, I can't hear what he's saying. Doing so might enable them to lit their own fuse?
Doing so might enable them to be elite in their own fields.
To be elite. To be elite their own fuse. Okay, I don't know what that means, and I can't hear one of the words. I don't know what it means to light your own fuse. It sounds like you were a bomb or something. This is not the right phrase to use. I'm not sure what he's trying to say.
Secondly, the internet will be like a big helper for those white collars.
Okay, white collar workers. You can't call those people white collars. You can call them white collar workers. You can call them blue collar workers.
It's especially important to those who sit in the office and do the sensitive work.
Sit in an office. Sit in an office, not this, not the office. Do the center to work.
Who sit in the office and do the sensitive work every.
I can't hear what he's saying. It sounds like center to work.
Above all, the internet also provides a wider range of chances to work out the challenges people may encounter.
Okay, well, I'm not sure what he's talking about here, but I do like the structure. Look at this. Here we have first of all, and then we have secondly, and then we have above all. I mean, it's pretty easy to follow. It's just everything that's between these markers is kind of hard to understand.
The internet also provides a wider range of chances to work out the challenges people may encounter. Plus.
And here we have the word plus. Okay.
Some disadvantages of the internet couldn't be ignored.
Now let's go back to the question. What are some reasons people use the internet? Why is he talking about the disadvantages? That's got nothing to do with the question.
People may encounter. Plus, some disadvantages of the internet couldn't be ignored either.
I mean, it's not. What he's saying is not false, but how is it relevant to the question?
Children and the young teenagers are too young.
The children and the young teenagers are too young. In English, if you say too young, you have to say too young to what? Too young does not mean very young.
So their general knowledge and the social experience is still limited. They should be given some pieces of advice in advance. So I think that's my point.
They should be given some pieces of advice for something. I don't know what. For what?
So I think that's.
Oh, I missed it again. What is he saying?
Some pieces of advice in advance.
No, I don't know. The only good thing I can say about this is the structure. What did he say? First of all, secondly, more importantly, and plus. Oh no, he didn't say. He said above all. Above all, and then plus. Using those markers, that's great. Pronunciation makes it hard to hear what he's saying, though. Okay, the well is fine, the actually is not, because what he's saying is not controversial, it's not shocking. He's just saying there are some reasons. So why on earth use the word actually for that? Certainly is a great adverb to use. This referring to what was mentioned in the question, so good referencing. Okay, then here, first of all, that's great. And let's see if we can find, here's the secondly. So, first of all, secondly, that's very logical. The kinds of examinations, I don't know what this refers to, it's not clear to me. They referring to the students, that makes sense. More often than what? What is he comparing this to? I don't know. The cause is fine. If you mispronounce words, it might lead to some loss of coherence. Like here, I don't quite know what he's talking about. Doing so, starting your sentence with a noun phrase, or in this case, yeah, I guess it is a phrase, doing so. Them, referring to the people, the students. Secondly, I mentioned before, here he is using those, but this is the first time he mentions the white-collar workers. So what is this referring to? There's nothing above this that this can refer to. Above all, I guess this is the third point. We've got first, second, and above all. Good phrase. Plus, good, maybe like an additional phrase. But you can't say plus either. It's got to be plus two. You can't put plus and either together. Here we have so and they're referring to the young teenagers and the children. They referring to the teenagers and the children. Please do not end your answers by saying this. Don't do that. Okay, trend is a good word as far as Lexis goes. Final paper is a nice phrase. Acquire and knowledge go together so well. That's good. Enable is not a bad phrase. Here, I think he tried to use some idiomatic language, but it just came out wrong. I'm not sure what it is because I couldn't quite hear this word. This should be white-collar workers. I don't know what do the center. I don't know what this means. Maybe I misheard him. I'm not sure. Work out is a great verb to go with challenges, and encounter is also a great verb to go with challenges. Let's see, social experience, it's pretty good. And yeah, advice, the measure word for advice is piece of advice. Going to the grammar, the students that are getting ready. So here we have a relative clause. Here I again highlighted acquiring knowledge because way is a noun, so you need to put a noun there. You can't say it's an efficient way of requiring, or you could say to acquire, but he got it right, of ing. Doing so, I mentioned that already. Those who, we have another relative clause there, and at the end the modal may. Couldn't, another modal. Here he uses the article the. I don't know why, because it's not a specific group of children, it's not a specific group of young teenagers. They should be given, I don't know why this is red, that should be blue. We got a modal here, and we also have the passive form, the be verb plus the past participle. Alright, let's move on to sample 7.
Which do you think is better, the internet or television? Apparently, the internet is way much better than the television.
Okay, now a couple of things. First of all, the internet, yes, we say the because there's only one internet. Television is a medium. We don't need the. So, internet is way better than television. We don't say way much better, just way better. Another problem is if you are asked to give your opinion, like here, which is better, don't use apparently when giving your opinion. Apparently is used when you describe something that you observe and you are not sure about what you are seeing. But for your opinion, you are sure what your opinion is, hopefully. So you can't use apparently for this, no. So here, when he goes on to say the TV, again, there's no the, it's just TV, not the.
The TV is just a media stream. It just gives you a lot of content endlessly without...
Put the adverb with the verb. It just endlessly gives you a lot of content. Put the endlessly with the verb.
Considering your personal needs.
What about things like Netflix, though? Because Netflix has an algorithm that can make recommendations based on your viewing habits.
There's always a mixture of nutritions.
Wait, what is happening now? What did he say?
There's always a mixture.
The always? I don't know.
Of nutritions as well as some garbage.
Okay, first of all, there's no such word as nutritions. The word is just nutrition. And nutrition is something you get from food, not from television. So I don't know what he's saying here. Maybe food for your brain, if there is really very intellectually stimulating content on television, you can maybe describe it as food for your brain, but definitely not nutrition, no.
By which I mean advertisements.
What? There's a mixture of nutrition as well as some garbage, by which I mean advertisements. Well, that's not clear to me. Are the advertisements the nutritionist part, or is it the garbage part? I don't know.
However, when we use the internet, we always enjoy a lot of liberty.
But there is advertising on the internet as well. So, okay, there are advertisements on television, that's true, but there are also advertisements online.
For example, recently I'm watching the...
Whoa, where's the I? Alright. But anyway, if it's recently, it happened in the past. So recently, I've been watching. If it's not finished, you should say I've been watching.
For example, recently I'm watching the American soap opera called The Goldbergs.
It's not the American soap opera, it's an American soap opera called The Goldbergs. And, because this is the first time you mentioned the soap opera, it's not specific yet.
And I love it so much. But
I don't understand. Because he talked about advertisements, and now he's talking about the soap opera. What is the connection between the two? I can't follow what his point is.
And I love it so much. But if I watch it on TV,
If I watched it on TV,
I'd have to wait for a whole week to watch another episode.
Mm-hmm.
But if I watch it on the internet, I can just binge watch the whole season.
Yeah, that's true. Binge watching, this is a great word to use. If you watch a whole lot of episodes in one sitting, that's called binge watching. Not a bad word to use.
So I do believe that with time going by...
No. So I do believe that in time, not time going by, in time,
more and more people will abandon TV shows and start enjoying shows on the internet.
but they are still shows. I think what he's trying to say is I think people are going to abandon watching shows on TV and watch shows on the internet. But they are still shows, I believe. Okay, for Fluency and Coherence, don't use apparently to introduce your opinion. That's not what it's used for. Here, it refers to television without this use. That's a good phrase. And it's a good thing that here he used by which I mean, because nobody would be able to know what he's talking about if he had just said garbage. Here we have however and when, two separate phrases. I'll come back to liberty in just a second. And then he has this example. He's been watching this show. Now, here he talks about liberty and how much he enjoys watching this TV show. And then here we have two buts. But if I watch it on TV, but if I watch it on the internet. You can't have two buts. Only one. So he watches it on television and he has to wait a whole week to watch another episode. But if he watches it on the internet, blah, 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 blah. So this should be and, this should be but. Or, no, there's no or. That's what it should be like. Okay, here we have the simple phrase so. Moving on to the Lexes, just say way better or much better, not way much. Media stream is pretty good. Mixture as a noun, pretty good. There's no word like nutritious. Enjoy and liberty, these two words go together very well. Episode is a phrase, not a phrase. Episode is a word, just like season, which is directly related to television, so that's pretty good.
as is binge watch. This is a great idiomatic phrase. This is as time goes by, and here people will abandon television, not television shows. For the grammar, I don't know why I said the TV, it's just TV. This is good without plus the ing, without considering VING. Recently I have been watching, so here we have the wrong tense. Here we have an if structure, if I watch. Again here, if I watch, I can. Here we have a modal, and here we have start with VING. That's what's good about the grammar. Alright, here's sample 8. The question is, what are the advantages and disadvantages of internet use?
Okay, about the advantages of using internet.
Oh, I should maybe mention here. They say advantages and disadvantages. Usually they will only ask you about one. They'll ask you either about advantages or disadvantages. They are not going to discuss both. That's why this guy says about the advantages. But this is not something that you really have to worry about in real life.
About the advantages of using internet.
The internet.
I think internet can help us to find information much easier.
The internet can help us. Okay? It's a very Chinese way of saying things, but I guess it's not wrong.
Therefore, it can help us study. And internet is also a good way to...
No, don't jump to the next idea. If you're talking about studying, expand this idea. How does it help you study? So we can find some resources that we might use in our assignments, or what? How does it help you study? Here you mentioned resources, but this idea is not well tied together with the idea of studying. He needs to link these two better.
Find resources. It's much easier than just searching in books. But about the disadvantages of internet.
No, don't say but about. If you want to move on to the next point, then say, well, moving on to the disadvantages, but if we consider the disadvantages, then, but don't say but about the disadvantages. That is not a good way of introducing a new point.
Internet. It can cause anxiety and stress.
You will notice all these sentences are simple sentences. Every single one. There's no complex grammar. Even though the grammar is accurate, it's all simple. Vocabulary, not bad, but grammar.
The problem with anxiety and stress is that they can...
Wait, what? The problem with? Did he say with?
The problem with anxiety and stress is that they can manifest itself.
Manifest is a great word to use. But then he says they, and then he says itself. They can manifest. So either drop this or say they can manifest themselves. Also, what's good about this sentence is the first sentence that's complex. Okay, but some problems in the complex sentence. They and itself, these don't agree.
Differently for everyone. But common physical signs of anxiety or stress include a racing heartbeat, butterflies in the stomach, nausea.
Well, everything he says here is true. It shows that he has a good vocabulary when it comes to talking about anxiety. But the question is not really about anxiety. The question is about the internet. The examiner wants to see if you have vocabulary to talk about the internet. So all of this is great, butterflies especially. But this shows that you memorized vocabulary related to anxiety, and you are trying to force this vocabulary to be used in a question that's about the internet. Examiner is not going to be impressed by this.
Insomnia. These problems
These problems, these problems, these problems
are serious
And you will notice there are long pauses where he doesn't say anything.
threats to our health.
Health.
So that's the
So those are.
that's the advantages and disadvantages of internet use.
You'll notice at the end I cut this off because he did say thank you very much. Don't say thank you very much at the end of any question. Also, this summary is pointless. Don't summarize your part 3 answer. This sentence saved him. This saved his score for grammar. This is the only complex sentence I could find in here. Great vocabulary, but unrelated to the internet. Okay, for the fluency and coherence, here we have about, used to introduce the topic of the advantages. Here we have therefore, used to introduce the consequence. Here we have it, referring to the internet. It, referring to the internet. I made this red because here he already used about, and now he's using it again. So why not say, but when it comes to the disadvantages, now this it refers to the internet, and that's okay, but I'm going to make this red because these 2 sentences are so poorly linked. They're not linked at all. Well, about the disadvantages of internet, it can cause, you should have linked those better. The problem with, here we have but. Insomnia is in red because this is the last item in the list, but there's no and. These problems, all of this is red because this answer is so short, you don't need a summary. And in no answer should you ever say, I think that's all, thank you very much. Please don't do that. Moving on to lexes, there's not a whole lot here. We've got resources, we have anxiety. They can, well, manifest is a great word to use. Actually, differently is a great adverb to go with manifest. Here's the verb. Here is the adverb. These go together very well. But this should be they can manifest themselves. Or they can manifest. Actually, there should be nothing here. Now that I think about it, let's get rid of that. They can manifest differently. Leave this out. Common physical signs. These words go together very well. All of these symptoms, especially, I think I talked about butterflies in the stomach as being idiomatic. Racing heartbeat is also idiomatic. Great vocabulary there at the end. Then here we just have threads, really. When it comes to the grammar, I don't think I found anything that's really outstanding. Articles are missing. It should be the internet. And I think I missed this one. This should also be the internet. Ah, there's another one. So there's some red and there's no blue. No outstanding grammar. Okay, here's sample 9, and the question is, how might internet use change in the future? Let's have a listen to this guy.
Well, in my opinion, I think it's because there are so many things that are found on the internet.
I don't see the connection to the question.
And the internet always makes our lives more
Always makes our lives
convenient. For example, on the internet, people can sell and buy things, watch TVs.
No, you don't watch TVs. You can watch shows. Yeah.
Play games, listen to music, make friends. They also
There's an and missing there, but okay.
interesting news and many other things. Besides, I suppose the greatest thing about internet
The internet.
is that people can actually do all these things together at the same time.
People can do these things at the same time. Okay, so you mean people can make friends and listen to music at the same time? Sure, why not?
things together at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
As time goes by, people find out they are dependent to the internet.
Now, hang on a second. As time goes by, he said this before. Here, he should say after some time, not as time goes by. So after some time, people will discover they've become dependent on the internet, not dependent to. They've become dependent on the internet.
Dependent to the internet. The internet is an exit way from their reality and
Exit way. I think maybe escape is the word he's looking for. So people use the internet as an escape from reality. Let's drop the there, just reality. It's an escape from reality.
the internet is an exit way from their reality, and that's why they're always online.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I do think that the way people use the internet may change.
Alright, let's look at the fluency and coherence. Here we have well, and in my opinion, and I think. It's too many. And in my opinion, and I think mean the same thing. Don't put so many discourse markers together. Here we have because, here we have and, here we have for example. These are all good. All the sentences are well linked. Make friends. He made a list, but there's no and here again. It seems to be something that he always forgets to do. They also nicely connects back to this. Besides, I suppose that's good. Actually, here is used correctly. As time goes by, in time, that's the phrase you should use. And here we have that's why they're always online, giving the reason. As far as Lexis goes, not a whole lot to say about that. It should be TV, not TVs. And you can do something together at the same time. You can just do things together. Dependent on, not dependent to. This I'm not so sure about. I think maybe it should be escape. And then the weakest really is the grammar. I don't have a whole lot to say about the grammar. There's not that much positive here. Lots of simple sentences. I mean, I could say they're error-free. I could say that. But except for that, I can't see any structures that are complex. Here he uses that again. So, simple grammar, although it's accurate. Okay, let's have a listen to sample 9. And the question is, why do some people spend so much time online? Whoa, what happened there?
In my opinion, I think it's because there are so many things that are found on the internet.
Interesting that he stressed on the internet. Why not so many?
And the internet always
Makes our lives
convenient. For example,
what is going on here? Why did I make this so crazy? This guy has very long pauses between some of the things that he says. I'm not sure why. Maybe he's thinking. Who knows? Let's fix this. Alright, let's go back to the example. Alright.
for example,
Uh-huh.
on the internet, people can sell and buy things, watch TVs.
Watch TV. Well, no, if you are watching something on the television, what am I saying? If you're watching something online, you're not watching it on TV. You're watching it on a computer. Unless, of course, you are watching streaming TV shows on your television. But then, anyway, say watch shows, not watch TVs.
Play games, listen to music, make friends.
And make friends.
They can also read interesting news and many other things. Besides, I suppose the great
I do like the besides. That's pretty good.
thing about internet
The internet.
is that people can actually do all these things.
Some stress on actually. People can. Oh, sorry, on can, I think. What did he stress? Can. People can actually.
People can actually
Oh, that's terrific. People can actually.
do all these things together at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
As time goes by, people find out that
This guy and his as time goes by. No, he loves this phrase too much. As time
after some time, people realize they've become dependent on the internet.
Dependent to the internet.
On the internet. People find out they have become dependent on the internet.
The internet is an exit way from their reality, and
I think here he's trying to say escape. The internet is an escape, or they use the internet as an escape from their reality.
Exit way from their reality, and that's why they're always online.
I understand that. Okay, next sample from the same guy. Might internet use change in the future?
Yes, I do think that the way people use the internet may change in the future, as it would allow us to be more...
They. Who's the they now? See, the previous noun is internet, and now here the pronoun is they. So what is the they referring to? Is it the internet? It's not clear to me.
The internet may change in the future, as it would allow us to be more aware of our world and our own behavior because of the use of artificial intelligence.
This is very vague. So how is artificial intelligence going to affect our online lives? They would allow us to be more aware of our world. The internet is going to allow us to be more aware of our world and our behavior because of the use of AI. There's nothing wrong with what he's saying. I just don't get the point.
Second, information sharing will be so enmeshed.
That's a great word to use. It'll be so enmeshed, so it's inseparable from our daily lives.
Our daily lives, that we mostly won't even notice it.
Is he still talking about the internet, or is he talking about some kind of implant? Because I know there are some companies that are working on implants where you will have a chip in your head and you can perhaps communicate with other people. Is he talking about that? If he is, he should have said, I'm talking about chip implants here, but I didn't hear him say that.
Thirdly, wearable devices.
There's no such thing as a variable device. I think what he's trying to say is various, not variable. So various devices will transform healthcare, alright?
Will transform healthcare delivery.
Are we still talking about the internet?
And finally,
No, you can't just go on to the next point. Explain what you're saying. Various devices will transform healthcare. No doubt that's true. I mean, right now, you can make appointments online. It's pretty convenient. But is that what he's talking about? He needs to expand his idea.
And finally, the bad
There's no duh, just bad guys.
guys will have new tools to make life more miserable for anybody else.
It's not anybody else, it's everybody else. This guy didn't really address the question, because like some of the points, like the last one, what is the relevance of this? And his ideas are too short. Like this part about healthcare, you need to expand your answers with examples. You can't just make a point that consists of a single sentence. The examiner cannot guess what you're thinking. You have to say what you think. You have to express your idea. And he didn't do that. Okay, for fluency and coherence, we started off with a very clear answer. We have as introducing the reason why. I don't know what the they refers to. Is it the internet? Is it the people? I mean, the previous noun is internet, so it shouldn't be they, I think. Here we have because of. Secondly, thirdly, finally. Now you notice everything in between is red. It's because he didn't develop these ideas at all. That's why everything is red. You can't just give sentences and then move on to the next point. For Lexis, we have aware, we have behavior, we have artificial intelligence, which is maybe the best of the lot, and then enmeshed, even better. Daily lives is not bad either. There's no such thing as variable devices. It should be various, I think. Transform healthcare delivery. These words go together very well. And then here, make life more miserable. That is like a fixed or a semi-fixed phrase. Great phrase. As far as the grammar goes, I should have highlighted this also. We have the modal may change, or may rather. Here we have, let's get rid of the allow, that's not necessary. Okay, we have may, we have would, we have the use of, we have will be. Why is this blue? That should be red. I don't know why it's the bad guys, because we're not talking about specific bad guys, we're just talking about bad guys in general. So, and finally, bad guys will have, not the bad guys. Grammar here a little bit better than the grammar we saw in the previous answer.